Now we're rocking and rolling, baby.
Hey, all right, we are live. Sea God will rise again in 7 days. Sea God ain't on today. Either is Drake. Got to hold it down. The extra pressure.
Driving.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They're coming to visit Cameron.
We'll drive the points home.
I know.
Hey,
I was just creating some hype. That's what the kids call it, right?
hype.
Hype.
Oh, dude.
Something
Speaking
like
about
that.
hype. Speaking about hype, I had a hype overload this past
My
weekend.
gosh,
Did you get so
Holy-
hyped this weekend?
you were. It was hype city over there.
It was hype
Were you
nation.
in like a gymnasium? It was like
No,
a convention
bro,
center.
this is like a convention center. I've been to the gymnasium ones. You had to go through the gymnasium ones to qualify for this one. I
to
qualified.
get.
I
Yeah.
played
All
the
right.
system.
Think about, when Avery says you have to fill up stadium,
Yeah.
don't you literally
many-
have to?
How
Yeah,
many people were
have
there?
to.
Where were you? How many people were there?
Okay. I was in it's a city called Rochester, Minnesota. So it's like the fourth largest city here. And there was over 2,000 delegates, which are people that had to go through like multiple different times to get. It's like we basically represent our neighbors. So like where Jess and I live, we have seats for, I don't know, 20 people to go represent us now at a state level on behalf of the Republican Party. And we chose that because we saw one candidate in particular that is awesome. He's running for governor of our state. If you don't know what governor is, it's basically like the president of a state. And they actually have a lot to say, right? Because certain governors like DeSantis in Florida, and was it Greg Abbott, the guy in Texas? Like you guys had governors that were like, none of that mask shit here, none of the vaccine mandates here. Cool. And you guys basically stayed open and all that. They can also influence things like tax. So if you want a booming economy, your governor can help do that. If you want a fucked up economy, your governor can also help you do that. And that's what our governor has. And to add bonus, during, for example, when the whole George Floyd thing happened, the governor had the ability to say, send in the National Guard. And our governor did nothing for 4 days. While literally Minneapolis, like 3rd precinct, the police station, like got caught on fire and it destroyed.
But mostly peaceful.
Yeah. All peaceful.
Mostly peaceful.
It was all peaceful. Okay. There's a peaceful fire, like a bonfire. They were singing Kumbaya outside the police
But
station.
if you go take pictures, in the Congress building or something, you're fomenting an insurrection, right?
Right. Exactly. So
But if you burn down a police precinct, that's mostly peaceful.
exactly. So yeah, for the past few days, right? So like this was the convention where the Republican Party chose their people who are running for different positions, like auditor. So they look at the state budget, attorney general. So basically like the top person who does like law enforcement, and then secretary of state, who is a huge key piece in the election integrity. So like counting the votes and all that. And Minneapolis is known for having a serious amount of voter fraud. Did you know the highest population of Somalians outside of Somalia live in Minnesota? We have some sort of law in place where we take in Somalian refugees, which is cool. The only issue is those Somalians tend to end up all voting Democrat. And we have this lady, Ilhan Omar, who represents part of Minnesota in Congress, who is extremely outspoken and very much pro defund the police, burn the system down, that whole thing. So it's a wild place that we live here, and it's consistently been voting Democrat for the longest time. It's like definitely a Democrat stronghold, but it's everywhere but the cities. Only the cities are Democrat, and everyone else is Republican, like Trump voter, that whole thing.
By the way, average IQ in Somalia is 67.7.
Wow.
So is it cool to just import a bunch of people from Somalia?
Yeah, no, not if they're not effectively supported, right? And they're obviously not.
Why don't we just support that country to be better?
Right.
I don't understand why a bunch of black people want to come live in a place where which is a bunch of racist people. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. But yeah, I just witnessed in front of my eyes like this whole system of brainwashing, of manipulation, like manipulating the rules. So they have something called Robert's Rules of Order, which I'm sure y'all have heard before, where they're like, I motion to this second, is it up for debate? All in favor say aye, all opposed say nay. And the people running the show are just like, they just represent the swamp. It's just so fascinating because they would just like totally manipulate the whole system, and they would take advantage of the average person. They're not being educated in the process. And then
Define the swamp for people that don't know.
So the swamp is like,
remember, Self-Perfected is an international group.
yeah. So
You have to be-
I mean,
Just come visit me and come look at my backyard and you'll see.
that's the swamp, exactly. The swamp is like career politicians and people getting paid out by private interest groups, people that just want to use the political machine to further their private causes. And then they pay off politicians, and they have politicians in there for years and years that don't really care about the people. They just care about, whoever's paying their bills. That's my take on the swamp. And so Trump really was the first candidate, I'm guessing, in a long time, first president that really came from outside the system and, came through and.
But think about it. He was in the system.
Right.
He was actually in the system, but he was the first one to really openly expose that, if that makes sense.
It was in the political system, or
I mean, he even said like he would like give money to politicians and host banquets and do this and that. And like him and Hillary Clinton were friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Until he ran for office and was like, I'm going to expose all of it. So I'm not saying he's bad because he was part of the system like that. You can't be a billionaire if you're not part of the system.
Yeah.
Right. But he was like, I want to expose that. Right. So anyways,
Yeah.
just to clarify.
Yeah. So that was kind of an interesting thing recently that's happened here in American politics, where it's like you can tell the system's kind of changing and things aren't going like they always used to. So now why I got involved is because I'm seeing firsthand, like they were trying to implement like vaccine passports here in the city. We literally moved our office out of the city because of that. I've had to change office buildings for our techno-tutor business multiple times because they're trying to do some shit with saying you need to wear a mask, even though I read the law and I learned based on the law, if we're conducting business meetings, you don't have to wear a mask. It doesn't matter. And so it's like these people just so brainwashed and all of that. I'm like, okay, we got to at least see, is there any candidate running for office right now that we could, at least get involved and start to see who are the other people who care enough to like go out and door knock and go out and talk about some sort of common sense, people standing up, if, in a very limited way. And that was cool. So we found a guy who we wanted to, back and get involved with. And we got to really see that just having money in the state doesn't solve all your problems. Even if you have a bunch of money, run a bunch of ads, commercials, all that shit, it doesn't matter, because if you can get the right people to show up and then become a delegate, you can then have say in the voting. So it was really fast. I learned a bunch of vocabulary.
Let me ask you a question, Mitch. This guy,
Yeah.
the people who were doing the door knocking, because obviously you said he knocked on 1 million doors, right?
Mhm.
Clearly it wasn't just that guy, literally himself went and knocked on 1 million doors, right?
Mhm.
So he had door knock, people going out doing that, right?
Yep.
How were they compensated?
They weren't, that I'm aware of. They were compensated.
Right. So he was able to knock on 1 million doors without paying them anything.
Yeah.
Just based on a vision, based on saying, here's what I'm going to go do.
Yeah.
So just for anybody who's watching this, who's like, looking at how to affect change in the world, like this is how you do it. And I'm not saying you don't have to compensate people. I'm saying if there's a way you can do it where you can make money also, like just consider that.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. They just,
that's pretty
was
cool. 1 million doors and people for free.
Yeah. It was like a well-coordinated like army basically. And so there's this group here in the city that's got quite the reputation because they're not afraid to go to political events and show up with like flyers and stuff, like exposing these people. Like the other week, it was so epic. I don't know if I shared it on the podcast, but Did I share about that one guy who's like a total fraud? He's trying to represent our place at a state senate level.
I don't think you did.
Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. Okay, there's this one guy who came to all these conventions and he's trying to, so like on a state level, you also have a senate. And it's basically like, I believe it's 100 people go and represent your like community at the Capitol. And so this one guy comes in and he's got just the most unfortunate voice. He just sounds like a high-pitched voice and he just doesn't sound confident. And he comes in, he's like, I'm running uncontested for the state senate. Like he seriously sounds like that. It's bad. And he says he's uncontested. I'm like, there's no way this guy's going to go represent us. But shit, if it's uncontested, I was like, should I go run? Like, what is this? And then sure enough, like a few weeks later, before the guy gets voted in, I get a call from this guy. He's like, hey man, he's not uncontested. He's lying to you. There's another guy who's actually like small business owner, chiropractor. He's got a family, cool guy. He's going to go represent us. And he's like, did you see this other stuff this guy posted? And the other guy with the high pitched voice literally has photos of him on Facebook, double masked, going to get his vaccine, wearing a Pfizer t-shirt. And this guy's pretending to be this like, you know, of the people Republican. And he's straight up like right after he got out of school, went straight into politics, no family, total loser to his fiance. He's like, I had to ask my fiance 57 times if I could run for office. I'm like, you're not a man. And you're definitely not fucking representing the state. And so and he's posting all this other stuff like pro like LGBTQ and pro transgender and all this stuff on his Facebook. And so I was talking to these guys with this more like political action group, and they go, they're like, yeah, we're going to bring all these flyers because people just need to see the truth. Like, this is what this guy stands for. He's willing to post on his social media. So we're at this event handing out these flyers, literally, and the flyers say like, does this look like a conservative candidate to you? With him with the vaccine and everything. And it was epic because I just saw firsthand how that guy went from like almost getting about 50% of the room to then he just went into blame. He's like, my opponents are attacking me and I got the vaccine because I have the seizure problem and my doctor said I should get it. And he just went downhill, just crashed and burned. And the other guy got in. So that's where I saw too, the power of using media and going and talking to people face to face. You can sell people because most people in that room, I watch people, they're like, because we had to do multiple rounds of voting. And I watched my people next to me going, I just don't know who to vote for, like down to the last minute. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you're telling me you're going to vote for this guy who's literally wearing a Pfizer t-shirt. And the guy said, I thought it would be funny. It was a joke for me to wear a Pfizer shirt. I'm like, that's not a joke. Like, that's like, that guy ain't representing us. So I got to sway people in the last minute where it really counted. But you just see how people are so unstable and so emotional. And so that it's like being in the room is really cool because you can actually talk to them face to face. So that was epic. And then now just to like bring it all home is so now yesterday was the past 2 days, we saw just the whole machine right in front of us. And yeah, so there's like 2,000 people on the floor. They all get an ability to vote. I won't even go into the whole election integrity thing because they're pushing these electronic clickers. And it's like, wait, aren't we the party that's saying that like election integrity is the biggest issue? Now we want to use these electronic voters. And they made a really compelling case how it's a very different machine and all that. And so I don't think there was corruption with that. You'd get corruption if it was paper ballots too, but that was fascinating. And then by the end though, it was like,
why doesn't everyone just have a number that's unique to them? Mm-hmm. And then only you know it. And then there's a database that shows what each number voted for. Mm-hmm. So you could literally just go and check.
So that's basically what they did. Yeah. They couldn't have it directly to the person, but it was like because they wanted to honor something called a secret ballot. So no one knew who specifically voted for it. There was like, but your group of people.
But your number should just be for you. I'm not saying in that particular example, I'm just saying generally voting. Mm-hmm. Like, why isn't it just, there's a record of it and you can go and check and see how did your vote actually get counted?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? That should be how voting is done, where it's like everyone can remember. Do you ever have that in class like where the teacher had like a list of all the, like these numbers and then like the grades, and you could go check your grade on
Yeah,
the
I
wall.
remember that.
And like no one knew whose number was you're the only one who knew your number. But it's like you
Yeah.
could go check. I'm saying then you would know after the fact, like, okay, how did my vote get counted?
Yeah.
And anyone could do the math and be like, okay, yeah, that checks out. That would
Mhm.
just be a simple, obvious way to do it. People talk about like, oh, that would be like, exposing people's stuff. Like, why can't you stand behind what you voted for? The fact that
Yeah.
people are afraid to talk about who they
But
voted
wait,
for
wouldn't it
is
not
like,
be exposing it?
it wouldn't be, but people, that's the argument. People are like, well, but then somebody could find out what number is and then intimidate you. And I'm like, okay, I mean, why wouldn't you stand behind why it's just fear, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And it was like we witnessed from basically 5 candidates, and then it like slowly got whittled down, and like people would bow out or they wouldn't get enough votes to get through. But we went through 8 freaking rounds of this thing, and it was because they only had a certain amount of time to actually get the endorsement, because they had a contract with this convention center and they only had like 23 hours total over 2 days to do the whole thing. It was like so fascinating because you would just see the main people on stage like stalling and using different tactics. And I don't know if they wanted no endorsement or they wanted one person to win. I couldn't really tell. I was getting mixed messages, but it was like the party wanted their person to get through and it wasn't happening. So then that guy endorsed another guy. And anyway, it came down to basically 2 people. One who's a complete fucking sellout. And well, he's a Black Republican though. So he had this, like, you knew that people had that like white savior complex thing where they're like, ooh, I want to vote for the Black man because
He used the Obama technique.
Yeah, the Obama. And meanwhile, that guy used to work for Johnson & Johnson, got a bunch of DC money, like just total swamp person. And he comes out saying, I'm the outsider. That's like what he started with. So he just straight lying to everybody. And like it was really interesting. And that he just got a sketchy voting record. And we saw him then battling with this other guy that is actually like decently legit. I mean, the whole thing is messed up. Don't get me wrong. I'm not endorsing the Republican Party by any means, but I got to see how the thing was working. Yeah. And by the end, though, we ended up settling. It was like in the last 5 minutes, there was like 1 vote left, and then the guy did win, and it was cool. But then this is what got crazy insidious. Was then at the very end, everyone's like celebrating. Then they're all going to go get drunk and just everyone's leaving the convention. They're even then saying, okay, everyone turn in your voting clickers, right? Turn them in over here. And then at the very, very end, someone then proposes a motion. They're like, hey, because they weren't done getting the governor endorsed. There was still the whole like party's constitution that had to be like debated about. So at the very, very end, someone goes, I motion we extend for an hour. And then they go, okay. And they got it. It was like a 50-50 vote where they needed 2/3 to actually keep it going. But it was like 50-50. And they're like, oh, everyone raise your hand. Because they said turn in your clickers. So now they have to go by hand raising. When everyone's standing in the room trying to leave, it's loud. People are distracted. And they go, yep, we're going to extend for an hour. Hit the gavel. And then they put on a video. Like, okay, we have another speaker. They put on some video so no one can contest it. Then they open it up. So I knew some people that were like in the camp that they understand the system. They were like behind the door knockers and like, this is extremely dangerous because they were proposing to add like 30 new items to the Constitution. One of them making that grassroots candidates, it would be like extremely hard for a grassroots candidate to then get onto the ballot. And that was what they proved. And so they're like advocating, like, you guys, this is insane. Who here has even read the Constitution? And no one raised their hand. And then they motioned. So it was just brilliant on the part of the people in front of the room who wanted to push it. And at the end, I'm like, I'm exhausted. Me and Jess are exhausted. We're like, look, if I really, really like saw that the Republican Party was the solution to the world's problems, I would have stayed in the room and I would have done my research. But I know the Republicans and the Democrats are collapsing. And I just see how long-term it's not a solution. So me and Jess, we ended up just like, okay, back to work, focused on what we're doing. But I got to see just at the very end how they just use the rules to just manipulate everyone. And now
you could do all this work, and then at the last minute they're like, nope.
Change it. Yeah, it was brilliant in the most evil way. And so I just witnessed, it was like a swamp creature just fucking stole the show at the end. Yeah, so that's what I saw was it's
Well,
like
the outcome of that last little situation.
say that again.
What was the outcome of that last situation of
I don't actually know what ended up happening, but they opened it back up and like they're just pushing everything through. That was then going to literally amend the whole constitution of the whole party. Yeah, it was gnarly. So I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna still be involved with this main guy who's running for governor because he can draw a really big crowd, and a lot of the people are into homeschooling. They don't trust the system, so it's a cool culture of people. Yes, you have the brainwashed people who are like, abortion is the most important issue, or don't take God out of schools, and they're on that. It's like that's not who I'm trying to talk to. I'm trying to just talk to the younger people who are like,
It's like, no, but listen, don't take God out of schools. Just take
Yeah.
your kid out of school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I got to see the different camps. It was like a different demographic behind each camp, and there was one. He was like the other kind of really true outsider candidate. His group they were almost like scary looking people. They were like people from the country, like carrying gun because you could carry your gun in there. So they like had their carry, they had their like trucker hat on. They're just like hardcore, like American flag, like Trump won hats, like shit like that. And I was like, wow, I like a lot of these people because they are like die hard, like we need to save this country, that kind of thing, which I would agree. Like America's got to be a fucking pillar in the whole world system, but we also have to reinvent what that looks like because it's like overall, right? This is my takeaway from it, and what I think would be really cool to talk about is like we're seeing the collapse of the world system right now. We're seeing the collapse of the political system, economic system, the media. Everything is like getting worse and worse. And now you have these people at the top trying to propose their solution of Great Reset, all these changes that are you can't fucking trust it. But who's stepping up to actually propose a real solution? I mean, obviously we are, but I think that'd be really valuable for people to see so they can have that vision, because that's what I saw too, is people are selling on the vision. And I see that people could use it in this group, could use a good download on like Equal Life Party. The different things that we see are just common sense to us. I think the average person in this group doesn't necessarily see that as clear as they maybe could. So
well, let's look at that for a moment. So here's how. So you're seeing firsthand, just trying to go into the system and kind of go be a part of it and get in there and try to get in and stuff. That's not effective.
Yeah,
because it's already like, now if you had, how many people were at that convention, would you say?
There was 2,000 delegates, probably another 2,000 that were alternates and just staff and random people there.
And so like 2,000 people. And how many candidates were there?
For governor, there was 5. For the other position, there's probably 10 total that were up for election on 4 positions.
So each person running has a certain number of delegates or something they can have or something like that, I'm guessing, right? Okay. So let's say each delegate gets, or each person gets like 200, let's just say, because there's 5 people, right, with 1,000, right? Now imagine maybe it's you, or maybe you're just there as a delegate, whatever. But let's say there's a candidate for who's within self-perfected. Let's just call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 5 candidates. What if 4 of them were self-perfected?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't give a shit which one wins. And so of those people there, 1,800 of them are all delegates for people who are doing what we want to do. So number one, you win, right? Or all the candidates, whatever, right? So the other thing you mentioned too was when you were there physically with people, you could sell them in that moment of emotion on, no, do this. And so didn't you have to have skills to be able to do that? If you were like afraid of challenging people or afraid of selling or whatever it is, it's like you couldn't even have stood there and talked to somebody and persuaded them. Mm-hmm. So all the skills you're developing, I just mean everyone generally, that we're developing through building your clubhouse, right? Selling just the people that are there on the principles, right? And we have this, right? For those of you who haven't seen it, go to a clubhouse. You can get one of these, right? So we have this brochure that talks about the tree of life, tree of evil. and the principles in it, right? So this is your brochure. And this is, just to be clear, this is not an active political party. This is raising awareness for at a certain point developing a political party. Okay, so this is not running for an office or anything like that. I'm just being very clear. Okay. But the point is, you use this to start teaching people the principles, because what's the thing that you noticed? I'm just going to put words in your mouth with all those people at the convention, is none of those people had real principles.
Yeah,
It was like different values. Abortion's important. This is important. Gun rights, constitution, medical freedom, blah, blah, blah. None of that stuff matters if you're not considering these principles, the principle of what's best for all, the principle of self-honesty, etc. None of that stuff matters because they're not being honest, and they're blaming and they're angry, all of those points, right? And so couple of points. One, when you have money, when you have celebrities and so forth, that's a huge component. Yeah. Based on what you were telling us, right?
Yeah.
Like the guy who almost got through was like, who was the swamp guy, had the celebrity guy. He had all this stuff, right? Or maybe it was the other guy that wasn't the swamp
Well,
guy.
he had his own
the guy
celebrity.
that you kind of liked, that wasn't the guy you were there. Right.
Yeah.
But the guy that got through had the celebrity thing. He had all the media. He's been on the news, all that stuff. So you have to have all that.
He did
So
one.
now imagine you own the media companies.
Well, here was one other fascinating point. So like when you can get there early and you have your team, and then like right when the door opens, you can like run in and put political signs everywhere, right? Because you want to get the signs near the stage, and when people leave for the bathroom, it's like you just want sheer volume of times people seeing the name, because that is a huge say in it. What was fascinating is the guy who ended up winning, who's, decent, right? Given the circumstances. He didn't even have his team there right away in the morning. I thought he would. I thought that because they had the biggest turnout, they were the most projected win. But he got some special permit from the city beforehand, so he could put his signs in places no one else could. And he could put these giant like light projectors and like shoot it up on the walls above everyone else. So what that showed me too is you got to really, like, if you really know the game and you have people in the right place, you can get like permits and stuff that no one else could. So that I was like, damn, it was like a chess game. It was so
there's the whole game, right? There's all that you have to understand, but then you also have the grassroots point, which is how you get the delegates, which is how you get the votes and the signatures and all the things that you need, right? So you have the people who are going out there to the people, right? And I remember, I know somebody here in town who has run political campaigns and does fundraising for political campaigns. I mean, we were over there. Remember when you were there with us?
Oh yeah.
We were over at his farm, and he was like, "Sorry guys, I got to go because I have a call with the Bush family in like 20 minutes." Right. So this guy is like very well connected with them. And he was explaining to me how he actually helped the governor win, right? And of a state. And he was saying, I was like, asking him, like, how did you do it? And he said, we went and we met with all of the local leaders in all the different places and like built the rapport with them and so forth. Because they were going to go with this other person, but they went. So you have people who know how to do all that stuff, right? I wanted to show you guys something real quick too, right? And it really made me think about this whenever you made that point about being at the convention and selling people. So I'm not saying this only applies at the convention, but that ability to in person sell somebody. Imagine if you have people going door to door, and they're not just like some random teenager who volunteered or somebody. Like they're somebody who knows how to fucking sell. Like imagine like the sales training you could give people, knowing what you know, and with the tools that you have. If they're all using these tools, and then they're out there selling a real vision for like actual real change, not just they're a person who volunteered because they're kind of behind the candidate, like, but they're like they're equal to understanding the point as the candidate is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to show you guys. Can you give me permission to share my screen real quick?
Oh, shit, ready.
Yeah.
Go to security, I think.
You have.
Wait.
I think
I'm a co-host.
Yeah.
Never mind. I can do it. Okay, I'm gonna share this.
He can do it.
So let me give context real quick. Can you still see me?
Yes.
I took Max to Louisiana a couple days ago to I had to go ship some things, and I was using a service that they don't have one of those branches near me. So I had to go over to Shreveport. So I took him with me, and we went to this store. It's called DHL. It's like an international shipping service. And like I was shipping out some of these brochures, right? But I actually had two sets. I had these ones, and then I had an old set that I had sent the wrong file to the printer. You guys remember this, right?
Mhm.
And so I had some that didn't have all of the stuff on it. And so I just had, but I had grabbed some of those by accident. And Max, he was like, I was about to like ship them out. Max was like, Cameron, those are the wrong ones. I'm like, what do you mean those are the wrong ones? He was like, those ones don't, those aren't right. And I was like, oh, man, I'm glad you noticed that because I wasn't paying attention.
Wow.
So I was like, yeah, you're right. So let me send the other ones. And then he goes, can I have them? And I was like, yeah, you can have them. I mean, I don't need them because they don't have all the stuff on them. So first thing he does, the woman behind the counter, he's like, hey, can I give you one of these? And she's like, sure, what is it? And he starts telling her about it, right? Another guy, the manager comes back because something was going on with their card processing system. Manager comes in and Max is like, hey, can I give you one of these? A guy from like, you know how they'll have like other shipping services come in or like the truck driver or whoever. This guy comes in and Max is trying to get his attention and the guy's not paying attention to him. And the woman behind the counter says like, hey, he's trying to talk to you. And the guy's like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, can I give you one of these? And he gives it to him. He starts talking about it. And then these two guys come in, this older guy and his adult son come in to like pick something up, like, you know, customers. And Max starts going over and talking to them and he gives them the brochure, right? So I just want to play a little quick clip of just so you guys can see like Max doing this, right? So let me hit, can you guys see the video?
Yeah.
I think I'm on this side, man.
Why?
Why?
Well,
Because I ain't evil. I'm not very angry. I don't blame people. I don't fear
well,
anybody.
if you are angry, let me tell you something. Like explain if you're like evil. What's the root of evil? Anger. What's the root of anger? Blame. What's the root of blame? Fear. What's the root of fear? Doubt. What's the root of doubt? Inequality. What's the root of inequality? And lack of education. And if you use calculator, which is the way I learned,
This boy's a salesman, ain't he?
yeah, it's actually really good. So
I'll take this home and read it, okay?
Yeah. I actually just did the same to the person who was giving us, who was helping us out with sending out the packages. I gave her one of these. Yeah.
All right. And then we went to
Wow.
a sporting goods place after that to pick up. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But we were looking in the baseball section because I wanted to get some baseball gloves for him and Seneca and me, and like Drake's coming down. So I figured that'd be fun to do that. And as I'm looking at all the baseball, it's like so many of them. I was like kind of surprised how many different kinds of baseball gloves there are. Max has his, Max didn't want to go in there because I told him we were going to go to this electronic supply store that was in that city, which we don't have one near us. We've never been in one where it's like you just have all the resistors and components and everything, right? So he was really wanting to, but it was on the way back. It was like on the other side of the city. So I kept telling him we'll go there on the way back. So when I was like, we're going to go into the academy, the sporting goods place, he was like, well, I don't really want to go in. And I was like, why not? He goes, it's just the least fun part of this trip. And I'm like, I understand that, but there's some things I need to do in there. So, and he was like, I was like, well, but you know what? We can make it fun. And he was like, well, how? And I said, well, you could bring your brochures. And he goes, oh, okay. Yeah. Let's go. And then like, so he's got like a whole stack of brochures, right? And like, while I'm looking at the baseball gloves, there's this mom and her like kid who's probably about the same age as Max. And he's like over there. I look over and he's like talking to her and she's got it open and he's like talking to her and he's like doing all this, right? Like explaining stuff to her. And it was funny because there was a certain point where like, I could see she was like uncomfortable because he asked the kid, he goes, because he gets to the point of lack of education, right? And he goes, did you go to school? And the kid's like, yeah. And the mom's like, yeah. And he goes, well, here's the thing. Going to school is a waste of time, right? And she's like, well, he's got to get an education, right? And then I could see her sort of like shutting down, right? But it was kind of funny too, because Max had them in this little plastic wrapper, you know, that they come in, the shrink wrap. And he had spilled them out by accident because he was like trying to do something. And like the little kid and the mom, he was like getting them to help him pick them up as he's like talking to her, right? It was so funny. But then afterwards I was talking to him and I was explaining to him, hey, if you don't know the person and you're just immediately saying that you shouldn't go to school, I said, the problem is that's going to create a conflict between you and the parent is going to be more likely to not want to listen or have you around their child because you're going to create a conflict between the two where you can't direct it. And he was like, well, why would that create a conflict? Because I said, it's true what you're saying. He's like, but why would that create a conflict? And I was explaining to him the point of The parent is in survival mode. They think that their kid has to go to school. They don't know any other way yet. So if you just right away tell them their kid shouldn't go to school and you sell the kid on why they shouldn't go to school, the problem with that is if the parent doesn't understand yet how that could be possible, I said, then the parent thinks you're influencing the child to not want to go to school, but the parent doesn't have a choice about it. So then they'll be upset about that. And they don't want someone to tell their kid not to go to school because they already have a hard time dealing with the point of the kid not wanting to go to school. So I said, what the best thing to do is most generally is to ask the child or the parent and the child questions about what subjects they like and don't like in school, and then find out what the struggles they have with it and wouldn't like it so that they can solve those problems. And then you can tell them about Technotutor. I said, once they have Technotutor, if they're like really into school, they can start to see as they use it, why do I need to go to school? Or you can start to become an influence where they trust you. So I was just teaching them more of like, and I asked him, I was like, afterwards, I was like, man, that was really great, Max. I said, can I make a suggestion? He was like, sure. So then I gave him all that context. So I'm not telling him you did a bad job. I'm just like, if you want to actually close the person, you have to then learn how to handle the objections. And if you, I mean, you guys understand what I'm saying, right? But my point is, it's really cool watching him because he has zero fear about it. He has zero fear about going up to somebody and then just persuading them. And it was actually kind of cool. Those two guys, I didn't keep recording because he went and sat down and there was kind of like a break in the conversation. So I stopped recording. But I think the guy asked like, how old are you? Right. And Max told him he's 5 and they were like 5. And then Max, there was some discussion about school or something. Oh no, I think I just suggested, I said, Max, tell him about some electronics. And the guy said, you know about electronics? And Max was like, yeah. And Max said, yeah, I know about AC adapters. Right. And the guy said, AC, you know about that? He said, what is it? He said, alternating current. He's like, yeah, but he said, and Max goes, yeah, do you know how the guy started just talking like, oh, I know about AC and DC and direct current, like kind of just trying to show off his knowledge. Right. And Max says, yeah, but you know, you can convert AC to DC. And the guy's like, how do you do it? And Max said, oh, you can use a diode. Right. And the guy's like, yeah, but how does it work? Like, kind of like really pushing the point, almost like there was like a point of spite in there of like, you don't know what you're talking about, kid. Like you're just saying fancy words, sort of. I could see that coming from the guy. And Max was like, well, a diode only lets current flow in one direction. So when the AC alternates the current, when the current changes direction, only the one current can go through. So it becomes DC. And the guy's like, yeah, that is how it works, right? And then the adult son was there, right? And Max goes, do you know what a Zener diode is? Do you know the difference between a Zener diode and a normal diode? And the guy goes, one's a zinger. Because he thought he said zinger, right? And he was trying to be a little bit spiteful, like, oh, I know the difference. One's a zinger. And Max said, no, Zener, a Zener diode. What's the difference between a Zener diode and a diode? And the guy's like, well, one's a Zener. And Max said, well, no, see, there's something called a Zener voltage. And he starts explaining like the inner workings of a Z, which I didn't know any of that. I'm like listening, like, oh, wow. Okay. I did. Because I remember before I had got him a video about different types of diodes, right? Because he was telling me about all the ones that he had in his little kit or whatever. And it was just so interesting him talking to these guys. And then Max starts talking about how school is a waste of time. And the older guy had talked about how he had a master's degree and a PhD and all this stuff. And like the son was just about to finish university or whatever, right? But it was so funny because as Max is talking, like the guys, the son, the adult son's like exposing how he doesn't know certain things. And Max was like, you know, copper is a really great conductor. And the younger guy was like, well, you know, gold is the best conductor. And Max was like, why? And the guy was like, something about the ions, or I'm not really sure. I learned all that stuff a long time ago. And Max was like, see, the thing about school is sometimes school can be useful. It can be good. Like, you know, if you wanted to learn ballet, you could go to ballet school, or, you know, if you wanted to learn about like different things. He was like, but the way school normally is, it's a waste of time. So you could see the guys getting defensive because they're like, that's a part of their personality. And then the older guy goes, well, do you know about, you know, the percentage yield on a long-term mutual blah, 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 like just like these vocabulary terms. I didn't know what the hell. I mean, I clearly understood the context was something about investing, right? And Max was just like, no, that's a hard one. And then like the guy was like, oh, and then anyways, long story short, they left, right? And then we were in the car and I said, Max, did you notice when that guy said that that point, he was actually trying to be spiteful. Did you notice that? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, oh. And he said, you know how I stopped him from being spiteful? I said, how? He goes, I just told him I didn't know. And I said, do you know why he was, he said, I know why he was being spiteful. And I said, really? Why? He goes, he was trying to make himself feel better.
Wow.
I was like, holy shit. And he's like, but you know how I stopped him? I just told him I didn't know. So he saw that I didn't know the answer to it. I was like, holy shit. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, there was a point where I was kind of like irritated by it, because it's like, you know, why are you have this really, and it was
Trying to
interesting.
prove that you're
Every
smarter
place
than a
we-
5-year-old, basically.
like, why are you doing that to him? You know what I mean?
Automate,
Like,
right?
just let him be smart, you know? It's like, I remember one time when I was younger, my dad getting angry one time and saying to me, like, you're smarter than me and you know it. He was like really upset about that, because I could always out argue him or whatever. And, you know, I imagine having a teenager that's like that, right? I'm sure it wasn't fun. But it's cool with Max, because there's times where he's like, you're wrong about that. And I'm like, really? Like, explain. And he explained, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I made a mistake. So he'll tell everybody, oh, you know, see these brochures, these are mine because my dad, he made a mistake. He was, you know, printing off the wrong ones and he was about to ship them, but I told him about it. And then so he gave them to me and I'm like, it's fine. I don't, you know, like, I don't need to not be called out for a mistake, but he's not doing it to be spiteful. He's just explaining it in the context of the thing. Right. So my point was he's learning how to persuade. He's learning how to support people. Right. Because what I was explaining to him, you just kind of saw the tail end of it. But I was saying, instead of just giving it to somebody, I was like, help them understand it. So he's learning how to use this. And I was explaining to him more context. I was like, you can start by asking the person a question like, hey, wouldn't you just like to enjoy life all the time? Aren't there some times where you just wish that you could enjoy life more? And he's like, and he was like, yeah, that makes sense. And I said, and then if someone says yes, then you can say, well, you know, like, what's an area of your life where you wish you could enjoy more? And then start opening up maybe like an issue that they have, and then asking them like, where is that on the tree of evil? And then help them see. And I showed him, you drop down, you go to the solution, right? And so forth, right? So he's learning how to do that. So imagine now you have a bunch of people who are really effective with that. And you can actually, how many people, when they go door knocking, they're just looking for these hot button issues for the political stuff, versus you're actually able to connect with the person and show them the value within their own life of the point. And then that's how you get them to the clubhouse, you know? So then you have a group of people that you're building over time that really are applying themselves and changing. They're not just selling the vision they've been sold on by the person who's like the face. It's like they're selling them on, this is coming from me. You only need one person to be the one who's running. That's just how the system works. But what if every person involved at every level was actually understanding and applying the points? So you're not looking for a savior anymore. You're looking for, one person has to go into the system and actually push the buttons or help change the laws and do all that stuff. But I'm not looking for them to save me, because unfortunately that's where everybody's at. Even for the people who are like the cool candidates, like you're seeing, there people are still just looking for them to save them. And they're just putting, and so what happens is when the political, let's say that person does get into office, when the political pressure comes onto them, right? The only people that are putting the pressure is the people who are putting the pressure, and the people who voted them are just like, they're not even in the picture anymore. They're just like, oh no, you go do all that stuff. They have no more real support. It's kind of like, oh fuck, I have to now get all this pressure from the system itself. You see what I mean? But with the way we're doing it, that's not going to be the problem, right? The candidates will have continuous in fact, they're going to be held accountable actually, like every day. Yeah. You know, imagine the generation of children that we're supporting through TechnoTutor, and that the parents are going to support. I mean, it's like, we're not doing it, the parents are doing it. How smart they're going to be and how they're going to see through bullshit. Like, imagine if every child in Ukraine understood that, and every child in Russia understood that. They wouldn't allow any of the stuff that's going on over there. You see what I mean? So I just want to show people that, because it's like, what's interesting too is I'm not telling him to do that. I'm not telling him to go share it with people. He likes doing it. He wants to do it. And he knows, he's like, if he sells somebody on TechnoTutor, he gets extra money. So he's like constantly pushing himself to try to get that person. So you saw how he was talking about education, and then he went to like, that's why I'm smart. That's how I learn, right? TechnoTutor. So he's constantly bringing it back to that solution, right? Can you imagine, man, if when we were little, if we had had that kind of education,
Yeah. Oh my god.
and then people ask him like, well, why don't you go to school? And it's like, what fucking school is going to teach you any of that stuff? You know, like what school is going to teach you any of that stuff? They're just going to teach you to be a slave. That's literally the point of it, right? Be a slave who doesn't know anything about anything. And then, which brings us to some of the other points I was looking at this past week, all of the Agenda 2030, Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum
Yeah,
stuff,
what's
right?
newest with that? Because I know we've been talking about it for like a year, but now it sounds like some development has happened.
I sent you guys.
There's an updated
Well,
2030 2.0 agenda or something.
Well, no, it's I saw this quick video, and they were talking, and they actually played the video clip of it happening. Of the UN is signing like an agreement with World Economic Forum to work together deliberately to implement Agenda 2030, which is the fourth industrial revolution, which is the Great Reset. So now they're saying and this guy was breaking it down. He was explaining the United Nations, which we all learn about in school. They actually have the power to write legislation and to put sanctions in place and so forth. That's like that's beyond any jurisdiction. So they do have power. The World Economic Forum doesn't, but the UN does. So the UN is now saying they're forming a legal partnership with the World Economic Forum to implement the Agenda 2030. And so I was listening to the guy break down. I was going to show you guys. Let's see here. Let me send you the chat. Let me do a new window. I'm just gonna share it actually. Okay, here we go. I just don't want to share all this up on my screen. Okay, I'll share this while we're talking. I think it's this one. You guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But there's some specific points I wanted to point out here. Where'd it go? This chart here. Look at this, guys. I mean, holy shit. Like I haven't seen this before, and I was looking for these specific points here, but now I'm noticing, look. Systemic racism, gender equality, diversity and inclusion, biotechnology, precision medicine, which means mRNA, Green New Deal's in there, drones, artificial intelligence, internet governance, digital identity. So look, that connects back to ethics and identity. Look at all the ones that connect to ethics. Systemic racism goes to technology, access, and inclusion. That's weird. Agency and trust, right? I mean, you just look around all this, like 5G, virtual and augmented reality, SDG 02, zero hunger. COVID-19's in there. What does that go to? Disrupting jobs, demanding new skills. I mean, if you go look at the Technotutor website, people always complain like, oh, it doesn't explain how Technotutor works. Well, no shit. That's not the point of it. But we explain very clearly that the purpose of it is to prepare people to be effective in the 21st century because you need new skills. We're like all this stuff in here, we're explaining that. We're just not trying to control what people do. We're saying we're going to prepare you to solve all these problems because if you're not prepared, someone else like Klaus Schwab is going to be the savior who tries to save everybody and help you with it. Right. Look, vaccination that goes into disrupting jobs. Look, literally, look, vaccination goes to disrupting jobs. Why?
So it's not safe to be
Is that fast?
it's not safe to be.
No, it's like if you don't want a vaccine, you can't have a job.
Exactly. It's actually what it is.
Isn't this fascinating though? But the reason I pulled it up because I wanted to show this point of like the identity part. Okay. Because one of the explicit things on here, I don't know if it's on here or if it's specifically on the let me look up biology. It's not on here. Okay, so it's probably on a different thing. But there was so maybe it's on the World Economic Forum thing, a website or whatever. But it talks about blurring the lines between.
If you go back to the ethics and identity bullet, there was a sub bullet that was like, either I think biotechnology or something like that. And I think you can click on it, so maybe it would bring you to something. that
Okay.
had-
Oh, it's right here. Yeah, there's a point about like blurring the
See
lines.
at the bottom,
with,
biotechnology.
which one? Biotechnology.
Yeah. Because why would that have to do with ethics and identity?
So
Hold
it's
on, let me go.
What happened?
what the
Oh
hell was
damn!
that?
When you click on it, there's all these other. Holy shit!
And then it shows how they're connected.
Wow. Synthetic
go-
biology.
Let me go back real quick because I'm. Oops.
Jeez. Yeah, I get this book. Put it through my TT.
Digital identity. Look, digital inclusion. From
Cyber
silos to
resilience.
collaboration.
Cyber resilience. That's going to be a big one.
Internet
Digital-
governance.
It in there. Oh, here we go. In their sort of. Oh, that's the original one. Okay, I got it. All right. Okay, I see how this works now. In their sort of original. Oh, here it is, right here. Merging the physical, digital, and biological worlds and fusing technologies in ways that create both promise and peril. What? They said the quiet part out loud.
Why would they say peril as well?
Because it's
Hey, we're gonna do some good. We're gonna do some bad.
I guess they're just saying the fourth industrial revolution, which we have to direct because there's perils.
Ah,
It's like, yeah, it's the part you're doing, motherfucker. It's like- but the point I wanted to point out, okay, merging the physical, digital, and biological worlds. Okay. Biological and digital. And then you look at these words, ethics and identity, digital identity, identity. If I wanted to, let me try to think of an example. I mean, it's like, okay, how does basic sales work? Okay. You guys have studied sales, you guys have done sales, you know sales. The way it works is you have to present a problem, but not only do you present a problem, you have to sort of break down the person's belief that they understand the problem already and that their way of dealing with it is valid.
Mhm.
Right? Does that make sense? Meaning like, if you go into the realm of brainwashing, which is, it's not really sales per se, because sales is more like taking what a person's vocabulary already is and working with that within that. Whereas brainwashing is more like changing their the way they think, right, about certain things, making new connections. So you go to the military, right? Everybody goes into the military. Who does go to the military? Everybody goes in there feeling like they're an individual, right? But the military can't have you feel that way. Like they need you to feel like you'll lay down your life for a group cause, a group identity, right? And a lot of the things they do is to break that down. Like when you go into basic training, you don't get your own room. You're in a room with like 30 bunk beds, right? In a big hall. And, like you're not allowed to talk. Like, I mean, I went through basic training multiple times in different contexts. And it's like the whole time they're breaking down your sense that you as an individual matter. And it's more about the group, the group dynamic, the cause, whatever. So you have to break down and put sort of in a state of chaos, right? In a state like because you have a structure to how you think, how you perceive things, what you believe, and you have to break that down so it's in a point of chaos, and then you have to create a new structure out of that. I mean, that's basic, right? So how do you get somebody? Someone's trying to join this room. What the hell?
Remove.
It's G, man.
Yeah.
Someone, what was I going to say? Okay. So let me just get to the point. If you wanted to get everybody to go along with this point of digital identity, meaning it's like, it's going to be your new identity, or it's going to be a major part of your identity. Everything is digital. It's not just you as your physical body. and what you believe. It's a digital thing that kind of has in a way a life of its own, and they want to manipulate and manage that. And you need to have your physical body go along with what is allowed digitally and so forth. In other words, imagine if you start to identify not as a physical human body, but more as a digital unit in a digital environment. Does that make sense?
Yep.
You have to break down a person's sense of individuality. And what grounds you in that individuality is your physical, actual individual body, which we know is interdependent and interconnected with all of their physical reality, but it has an individuality to it. So how do you break that down? I mean, look at the whole transgender thing going on. Can you see that it's the first step in breaking down people's identification with their physical body as making them an individual? And then it's like, now you can reform that into this other point, like into accepting some other kind of way of looking at of identity. And I was starting to connect these dots by just looking at this other thing I sent you guys. Let me see if I can find it. It was from Matt Walsh. He's making this movie. It's coming out in June called What is a Woman? And I watched the trailer of it, and he's like interviewing, you know how they do those things where they do like an interview and they like flip parts of it and all that kind of stuff, right? And he was like interviewing like gender studies people and like professors, and he was interviewing like a congressman or a senator. And when he asked the guy, you know, what is a woman? They were like, this interview's over. Right. He's like, I'm just asking what a woman is. I just want to know what a woman is. And then like you hear like a staffer go, and you're not going to find out. Right. And, you know, obviously he's clipping, and I understand all that. But there was a little clip of him interviewing this trans man. So born a woman, biologically or artificially altered their body to look and appear male and so forth. Right. And the person says, I will never be a man. Like, I'm a woman. I mean, I'm a female, and I've made myself look like a man. And he was like, and then they showed another part of that conversation, and he goes, they got me at 43. He goes, your child has no chance. And he was like a person you could kind of tell who was like, I don't agree with brainwashing children. It was just showing like, I got impulse with all this as at 43, being willing to do all these changes. Your child has no chance.
Wow.
Right. And then you start looking at the whole TikTok thing, right? I just watched this video also from Matt Walsh. He's got some pretty cool stuff. Where he was showing this video that's kind of gone viral, and people are writing articles about it, like in all the big, you know, like I don't even know what specific places, but you know, like some of the mainstream stuff. This woman, she's a lawyer, and she was showing how she's really depressed and what her morning routine is. Because you know how these morning routine videos, right? And usually it's like, I go out onto my balcony, you know, in Hawaii, and I have a green smoothie and I do yoga for an hour. And it's like trying to like be like, I have this perfect life. So she was like doing the counter to that of like, I'm a lawyer and I'm fucking depressed and I can't even brush my teeth this morning. I'm just going to put my hair up in a ponytail and fuck, I'm 30 minutes late and I fucking hate, you know, I'm totally depressed. And he was obviously criticizing the point, but I was just looking at it as, have you guys seen all the stuff on TikTok about it glorifying and amplifying mental illness and personality disorders? And people are like, there was one thing I was seeing, how there was girls, this happened to a lot of girls. They're going to the doctor presenting with Tourette's symptoms that have never been seen before, but they're specific to influencers on TikTok.
Really?
So it's like, it's a specific TikTok influencer who's, maybe they have Tourette's or don't, doesn't matter. They have some specific way they talk. And these girls are presenting with Tourette's, where the Tourette's is mimicking things that this person says. Right. You can look into it, right? It's a whole thing. And now there's like TikTok influencers who like, they talk about all their different personalities and they have different clothes they wear and makeup and all this stuff, right? And so my point being that an entire generation of children is now being influenced from all these different sides. To, at the end of the day, it's not about, it's getting them to be transgender. If you think it's about being transgender, you're missing the point. It's about making you just totally confused about who and what you are, and then having it so that you're sort of just open to suggestions. Interesting thing, like I've talked about this before, like our kids, they love to play like characters that they're reading about or things like that. And what's interesting is a lot of times they'll play that they're the opposite gender. Like Max will be the female character and Seneca will be the male character. And it makes sense if you're going to play pretend, you're going to, I mean, how is that any different than like, oh, I want to be the chicken in the story? I mean, you're playing something that you're not, right? And then a parent might be like, well, that's a sign that they're transgender. And then they start playing into it and all this bullshit like we've talked about, right? But it's interesting because when we were in Academy the other day, Max picked out some shorts. They were like these bright neon yellow shorts. And then I got a shirt for him. And I saw some like, you know, like this salmon color. It's kind of like a pink sort of color, right? Usually you see these on like boating shorts or, you know, it's like a preppy thing, right? And I saw some, they look like nice shorts. I was like, hey, Max, what do you think about these? Do you want to get these shorts? Because he always needs more shorts because he grows so fast. And he looked at it, he was like, no, I don't want those. And I was like, really? Why not? He goes, that's kind of a girl color. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. So it's like, he actually doesn't want to be a girl. You know what I mean? Even though he'll play and pretend as a girl, when it's like, here's some shorts just for you to wear generally. He's like, no, that's a girl color. I don't want those. I was like, and we've never told him he can't wear pink. And actually, when he was little, he liked to wear pink. And we would, if he asked for something pink, we would get him something pink. But now and he think about it, he's not watching stuff that's like boys do this and girls do that. And he just sees the difference. Right. And he's just saying like, no. So he's already getting to that age where he's realizing I am a boy and I can play pretend and no one's going to make me feel ashamed for playing pretend as a girl, but I'm a boy and I want people to understand that I'm a boy. So no, I'm not going to wear that. And no, I don't want long hair. Isn't that fascinating?
Wow.
So now imagine though, you're putting your kids into this system that's like, we know as parents, you're not directing anything. You're not explaining a fucking thing to them. So we'll do it. And I say we, it's just the system. It's a system. It's like, it's going to happen automatically. And I'll tell you one more quick thing. I got invited to this like crawfish boil thing by like one of the guys who was doing some work for me. And he said there's going to be his kids were going to be there. There's going to be a lot of people there. So I was like, sure, we'll go check it out. But Katie wasn't going to go with the baby and everything. So she took Seneca into town to do some stuff. And I took Max because I was like, Max, would you rather do this or this? There's some kids there. So he wanted to go. So I took him and had some crawfish and like I was letting Max go play with the kids and so forth, right? And he was like, I want to stay here a really long time. And I was like, we're not going to stay very long. Like everybody was drinking, you know, it was like a crawfish boil where it's like it was called a redneck bash, right? And I mean, they were all friendly, but it was like they're all just like drinking. And the whole point was to get really drunk by 5 o'clock and then the kids are out and then it's like adult, you know, and the guy even told me, he's like, around 5 o'clock, it's not kid friendly anymore, you know? I'm like, okay, well. So once I realized what it was, I'm like, okay, Maxie, we're not going to stay very long. And I explained to him why, right? And he was like, all right, that's fine. So then we did some other stuff. But while we were there, he was like playing with some kids. First thing he did was saw a group of girls with a boy playing. And then he went over there, started talking to him. He's like, hey, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Max. What's your name? And the girl's like, oh, my name's whatever. And he's like, how old are you? And she's like this. And he's like, I'm 5. And then next thing I see, he's the 3 girls were driving around in this golf cart and this boy wanted to be in there, but they were like, no, you can't. Max went over there and persuaded one of the girls to get out so he could ride around and had 2 of the other girls driving him around in the golf cart. He's very persuasive. Like he doesn't whine, he doesn't complain. He just knows how to persuade. So anyways, the reason I give that context is last night we were in the barn and I have this desk with like some drawers and stuff in there. And he found like this old cell phone that's just, you know, it's like, do you ever just like not want to throw something away? Because you're like, I don't know. I mean, I paid $800 for this phone, even though it's like 5 years old. You know, it's just like, maybe some reason I'll need it, right? So I have like this old iPhone in there that, you know, doesn't even charge anymore or whatever. So he was like in there and he brings it up to me and he was like, hey, I can't get this to charge. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't use that kind of charger. And he was like, well, I was like, do you want to do something on the phone? You can use my phone. What do you want to do? He's like, no, I need my own phone. I was like, what do you mean you need your own phone? He's like, you know, he's like, I saw a lot of kids when we were at that place. A lot of kids have their own phones. So I need a phone too. Right.
Wow.
And I was telling Katie about this and I'm like, can you see how that dynamic works? You put your kids in school and they're like, well, I see other kids with phones. I need to have a phone. Or I need to do this, or I need to do that. I need to have TikTok. So imagine how hard it would be to tell your kid they can't use TikTok. I mean, they're at school 8 hours a day. They're going to be fucking watching it all day anyways. Can you guys even imagine what it's like to be a child in school now? Where literally every like 10-year-old or 8-year-old has a phone Like, what do they even do? How are they even having any like lessons? Or I mean, we know it's
Right.
all bullshit anyways, but people are like, well, I was in school, we actually learned math. Like, no, you didn't. Because if you did, you wouldn't have hired me as a tutor. So don't give me a fucking break. Or don't give me a fucking break. Do give me a break, right? But you know what I'm saying? Like, don't give me that bullshit. Like, you didn't fucking learn anything. So don't defend the way it was. It was bullshit then. It's bullshit now. But I mean, fuck, like,
That's so fucked. I remember in high school, like when I got a phone at the end of middle school, and then in high school, I would like learn about these different games you could play, like Angry Birds and shit like that. I just remember being like, when we'd move chairs in the classroom, when I'd get in the back, I was like, oh, this is so amazing, because now I can literally play games the entire class and they can't see me playing games. It's like that on fucking 1000x now, because you got then the TikTok and the info.
okay, when I was in high school, did you guys have those TI-89 calculators? Or
Oh,
those,
yeah,
those like
yeah,
laughing calculators in school?
You can play games.
We played the worm and the block breaking games
Yeah, I remember that.
because our cell phones didn't do any of that. See, those were the good old days when we really learned shit in school. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The good old days, right? It's like I just felt like I was being just drained every day. That's what school was. It was draining. It was confusing, and I was like, "Why am I here?" But I didn't know another option. Just like those other kids that Max is talking to, they don't know a better option, and that's like everybody in the world right now. They don't see a better option. Right now, they're going to see Klaus Schwab, Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's going to be painted all great by the United Nations, these brave United Nations people, and in reality, it's designed to enslave. In earlier, when we were talking about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, like the reason we say it's fucked is because it's being done from a starting point of control. Right? It's not designed to create self-leaders and educate people. It's designed from the starting point of lack of education, and it's not addressing the education. It's not giving people a real education. So that's why it's fucked. For anyone who didn't put two and two.
And Cameron, how did you guys address the point with Max?
about what?
The
The
cell phone point.
I mean, I just explained to him like it doesn't make sense for him. He already knows that. So I just said, no, we're not gonna have a phone. Like if you need a phone right now, if you need to do something on that phone, you can use mine, but it doesn't make sense practically for you to have one.
Right.
And he knows, like it's like I don't even have to explain the points at this point because he knows why. Not that I could, if he asked or if he was having resistance to it, I would, but it was just interesting. It's like he saw it there and it's like, hey, I should have a phone, right?
Yeah, that's fast.
But they understand, like, not that what's on there and it's not best, and there's so many, and we just explained to him like it's not to create a fear about it, because you can see he's not afraid of it. We're not like, oh, you never look at a phone. It's just he understands, okay, yeah, there are things that people are trying to impulse through advertisements and things like that, or other things that if it impulses me, it's not best for me, right? So he understands.
That's cool.
But you still have to then handle that point.
You put something in the chat. Taxation provides the foundation of any well-functioning society and is the potential solution to many of the weightiest issues of our time.
This is a statement
Oh,
from that World Economic Forum thing.
Interesting.
So they're saying it's an important part of our world.
Wow.
And then it says taxing carbon emissions could meanwhile help curb global warming. And tax hikes may actually booster inclusive growth if spent appropriately.
And
Spent
that's
appropriately.
that's so funny. It's gonna go from GST, which is like our one of our sales tax here, to GGT, the global governance tax.
They even have one called corporate governance.
Wow.
I
That's
mean,
insane.
we could do a whole fucking thing on just this. It's totally crazy.
There's so, and
This is-
it's so obvious.
They
how
keep
they're-
using the word inclusive too.
Right. It's so
were you
obvious
gonna say?
how they are using like all of this brand new vocabulary. So there's no way that any individual is gonna look at that and be like, oh, I'm gonna study this. They're just gonna be like, oh my God, this is too much. I'm so glad people are subconsciously. It's like, I'm so glad other people are focused on this shit. Yeah.
It's yeah, we're gonna have to cut it short though, unfortunately. Because I know we have other meetings and so forth. You guys want to give any final thoughts?
Just
mean-
if y'all aren't clear on what the Equal Life Party is, you got to reach out. Like you can reach out to me, reach out to Asif. Like we can explain the vision and then how you can use your clubhouse. Because like, look, Klaus Schwab ain't slowing down. UN Agenda 2030 ain't slowing down. there is a ticking time. It's a ticking time bomb. And so for anyone who's not clear on the vision of where we're headed, reach out, join the Facebook group, come on the Friday calls, check out other podcast episodes and share this with people. That's what I would say.
Yep. Cool.
Oh, all right.
That's all. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next
There.
time.
Everybody.
Yeah, see everyone.